and hey, it's recession, it's this, the market condition. You really need to get in there because people that got a place a year ago that got a good buy, didn't overpay for it, and now they can refinance in that 5% range. That's gonna be the best thing that ever happened. None of us know where the rates are going to be in a year or 2 years, but those rates keep going down, and eventually the payment becomes less. The value is going to be more.
Let's spend 10 minutes together to change your life.
And if you're buying a small motel, if you're like, I'm not doing a feasibility study, it's only 6 rooms or 20, 30 units, but at least know the area. And then when I'm financing, the biggest thing is having something that's local or boots in the ground is very important on our deals. And that's what makes sense. And then also just knowing where it's at too, because it could be a really good location, but if you build on the wrong side of the railroad track or wrong side of the highway, it could be a very bad area. And always look at that because that's what. And again, if you're visiting the property often and you're not a boots in the ground, that's great. But I just see so many deals that people aren't boots in the ground and they're like, oh, I got this good area. I'm like, oh, if you build right across the street from there, that's not good. Like, oh, we built across. And I'm like, no. And you can just tell, that these locations are important because even when I was in Jake and Gino, that's what feasibility study, that's what they're looking at is location, where it's at. And they're like, pick 2 locations. Because if when I first got in the program, they're like, where are you buying at? And that's kind of what you're saying earlier about your buy criteria. And I'll have certain cities in there, but we have different partners in different areas now, so we can do that. But at the beginning, I'm like, best thing to do is like, hey, I'm buying in Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm buying in Charleston. I told my coach, I was like, oh, I'm buying in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. And he's like, hey, tell me about Charlotte. Tell me about this. Where are the good parts of Macon? I'm like, I have no clue, man. And so that's when I, with Bill Ham, my coach, which you guys moved over here to Clearwater. He's like, you got to find an area. If you don't know the area, same thing. And I've had people that were talking about the area. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's about a mile from Clearwater Beach, but that's a bad area there. Oh, I looked under crime.org and it said pretty bad. I'm like, no, no, it is. It's like a D area. So, but yeah, those are very important things. So.
Yeah. Another crucial metric is, I think, the median household income, right? So if you buy this distressed asset and you think you're going to raise the rents $200-300, but you look at their median household income and it's not affordable for these people, it's not going to happen, right? So you got to understand what these people are making, per household, and make sure they can afford the rent increase.
Yeah, that is, if it's, especially like you say, if it's non-tourism and you're looking at like something for long-term stay or mid-term stay, it's very important to look at that because again, these are all parts of, doing your due diligence, doing your feasibility study, whatever it is. Because even we were looking at some midterm stuff for a while, and then a friend of ours was like, hey, the nursing salary is down. It's the same thing if you're buying and you're like, oh, we're going to go, the rents are going to be, $3,000 a month. But if the medium salary is not that much money and they're in a 1.5 of the money they're making, because I know when we rent, we're looking at around a 2.5 to 3 equity, where they're at and everything. But yeah, people's wages are down. Well, they were up, but people are cutting hours right now for the economy, going to recession and all that. But yeah, that's the biggest thing because if you're, I mean, and again, you can look if you're in a small area and there's a lot of medical and you're at a different area, but you have to look at what you're building and what product it is and see if it's matching that area and there's a demand for that product in that area. And again, if you're building something and it's, very expensive and the cost of living and everything and the people who are in there are not making much money at all and they're like, oh, we're making $35,000 a year and you're upping it, you're not going to get it. So I see it all the time. But now if they have new businesses going in there where employees are making $120,000 a year plus, and there's new demand coming in there, there could be that product. But again, how many employees are there? Is there a city 15, 20 minutes away that's nicer and safer that they can be in a, apartment complex or house or whatever else it may be? But yeah, those are all just great factors. I mean, we look at that. We look at, that's when we look at these things. We look at the competition, and people look at comps, and you got to look at. I would say to get on that same thing is apples to apples comps, because somebody will look, oh, look at this comp over here, it's $1,400. This place is $1,200. I'm like, yes, they have a gym. It's a 2000 built. This place is 1965, and the place is falling apart. And oh, the broker said it's a $3,000 renovation per unit. I'm like, that's barely the floors and the paint, like barely. So Yeah, it's very adamant about that because if you're going to over renovate and the people aren't making as much money in that area, it's 100% true. So
Another thing I just want to touch on. So you got to keep an eye and kind of understand where the rates are going. So the 10-year treasury is at 3.7 right now. So you want to just talk about how that's going to impact the market and kind of what the rates are looking at right now, probably around 4.45%, right?
yeah, it's so it's pretty crazy. I finance hotels, and you got SBA prime still 8.5, so that hasn't really changed, which is kind of a strange thing. So I'm refinancing a lot of people right now that are in that 9.5 to 10.5, 11% rate. On the apartments, right now with Fannie and Freddie, we got a 5.5% rate, a 5.8, but now I think the rates are getting to be in that 5.1% rate for the agency debt. So again, I think people are trying to wait for a deal. I think the best thing is finding a deal right now and refinancing this next year or 2 years, because if people that are waiting and hey, it's recession, it's this, the market condition, you really need to get in there, because people that got a place a year ago that got a good buy, didn't overpay for it, and now they can refinance in that 5% range. That's gonna be the best thing that ever happened. None of us know where the rates are going to be in a year or 2 years, but those rates keep going down, and eventually the payment becomes less. The value is going to be more. So again, like they always say, I mean, the best time to buy, was it today, and then the second best time was yesterday, or vice versa. But the rates going down is not going to make anything any easier to buy later. The values are going to be going up. I don't think they're going to be going up real high, because the only thing that the rates went up like 400 to 500 base points. Yeah, they're down like I think 150, 175 now in the last, like, I don't know, 3 weeks. It's been quick. It's been quick. I think that it could be a good thing, but as long as you're buying right. Again, it's one of those things that the rates are going to help. A lot of people that couldn't refinance 2 and 3 years ago, that bought something on bridge debt, I think are close to doing it now. But yeah, the rates are going to help people out on certain aspects and everything else, but prices are going to start increasing and everything else. But that's why we like affordable housing, is some of these things that the prices are going to increase again because of the rates going down. Who's going to afford a $600,000 house that makes, like, kind of like you said, 60, 70,000 a year? Somebody's into hospitality making 30, 40,000 a year, whatever it is. So it's getting harder and harder to live. That's why we are buying affordable housing. And I'm not really talking about, just something that's a D location. It's something that's in a C plus or B minus location, that the affordable housing in that area, one or two different affordable housings, are paying well. We had $1,200 a month rents in our Atlanta. We increased those rents to $1,400, $1,500, and now we're getting 13 something for our Jonesboro affordable housing.
If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned. Part 4 coming out in a couple of days.